Very good, ready to go. So I want to say good morning, good lunch, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you're joining us for this 6 seconds webinar today, and a warm welcome to our webinar here. It might be that you're joining first time a 6 seconds webinar, and you're maybe not so familiar yet with 6 seconds. So I would like just to give first forefront a short introduction, really short, about 6 seconds itself, because 6 seconds is the world's first and largest global network about emotional intelligence, with over 10,000 certified expert facilitators and coaches in 150 countries. The division EQBIS is the division of 6 seconds that is dedicated to the corporate business sector, and since its creation in 1997, actually has developed in very close contact with companies as well, a system that is capable of responding to key corporate needs through the emotional intelligence paradigm. And what's also part of our webinar today's topic is that since 2011, 6 seconds is tracking the state of the hard report. In the state of the hard report, the changing trends in emotional intelligence, and links it to the success factors of effectiveness, well-being, relationship, and quality of life. And this analysis of state of the heart is actually the world's complete data about emotional intelligence, with a sample from a population of over 270,000 people. So that introduction I wanted to give you first, because today we talk about parts of this state of the heart latest data in our webinar, with the topic of mentoring and emotional intelligence, especially the focusing on empowering the Generation Z in the workplace. And that's why I'm so happy for this topic to welcome today 2 experts that discuss this with us, which is here Giacomo Gentili and Minerva Lopez Perez. Thank you, both of you, for taking the time and being here.
And hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. It's very interesting topic.
Thank you to both of you. And before we dive into that, I haven't mentioned my name yet, as you're joining maybe first time as well. I'm Maria Olsson, located in Austria. I'm the EQ Corporate Manager for 6 Seconds Europe and also ICF PCC Coach. But then specifically a bit more about our 2 experts here. I want to introduce you to Giacomo and Minerva. Minerva, who is with us here today, has over 25 years of professional experience closely connected to the development of individuals and teams. Minerva has held positions both as a talent management specialist and as a generalist in human resources, leading teams in large Spanish and international companies. Nowadays, Minerva is associated to the Net for Talent, working to unlock the potential of individuals and organizations, aiming to foster greater well-being while achieving also results. Minerva is also an ICF PCC professional coach and accredited as a mentor by RED de Mentoring de España. Thank you, Minerva.
Thank you, Maria.
And another expert that is really an honor to have here with us as well in the 6 Seconds webinar is Giacomo. Giacomo is the co-founder and CPO of PAC. PAC is a fast-growing startup offering digital mentoring and coaching services for employee retention and engagement. I think, what else do we need more than this these days? He has a background in international management and has previously worked as business developer in an innovation hub and an innovation consultant in a scale-up focused on B2B SaaS. He has spoken at various prestigious events and universities and has been recognized as the Forbes Under 30 in Italy. What a recognition. He's a proud member of Italian tech advocates and Nova talents. So what a rich expertise here in this webinar.
Thanks a lot, Maria. Too much of an introduction. Now the bar is set very, very high, but we'll keep up with the pressure, I guess.
I just want to say pressure is on. Navigating emotions is part of emotional intelligence, right? That's why we are here today. So let's dive into this webinar. As I already shared some information about 6 seconds. If you want to know more about 6 seconds, please go also to our website. I think it's time to really dive in. You see 6 seconds is really a global player here with over 200 nations and regions and over 27 languages of everything that we offer. And what I want to mention, apart from being the biggest and largest network about emotional intelligence, 6 seconds also has this global scalable approach, as I mentioned, with all these countries, is certified by really recognized bodies around the globe, and also has a scientific and measurable approach. But let's dive into our topic. I think this is really what we now are here today, also the people who are joining us today. As mentioned, the state of the heart. According to the recent state of the heart research, the world is unfortunately experiencing an emotional recession. And we see this here on this slide. It's characterized. We see the recession here, where we clearly see that it's a decline of, well, clearly, but we know it's a decline of 5.54% since 2019. But then it's interesting to go a bit deeper and look at the specific area what we want to talk today about Generation Z. Because this statistic is also characterized by a low well-being and high burnout, and specifically in the workplace, where 53.7% of Generation Z reports low satisfaction score, indicating a particularly high risk of disengagement and burnout for young men and women. So I'm really curious now, as also Giacomo has been diving into this report, to hear from Giacomo. What does a young entrepreneur like you, Giacomo, working just in the field of human resource development, thinks about a state-of-the-heart data on young people like this?
Well, thanks first of all, Maria, and I think you did an amazing job with the report, which I read, and I feel like it's extremely interesting and very actual as well. The current workplace dynamics we're seeing more and more evolving. It resonates deeply for sure. Not only because I kind of feel not really Gen Z, but let's say to the border. I was born in 1995, but most of my team at PEC is actually a Gen Z member. But also for what is the that we're pursuing with PEC and trying to make employees happier in their own places. Especially the significant emotional challenges that are depicted in the reports. The most striking facts for sure: 1 out of 2 of the Gen Z employees reporting low satisfaction. We know how much that impacts productivity, motivation, engagement, retention at the end as well. And being able to navigate emotions effectively, having intrinsic motivation, pursuing long-term goals rather than shorter ones, it is having an impact on that for sure. To me, it is very striking seeing that the proportion of Gen Z workers impacted by that and the degree to what they are impacted is higher than the other target groups or target audiences, let's say. And the fact that stress is highlighted, resilience is decreasing, and eventually this can lead to burnout is not the best possible outlook, let's say. But at the same time, we, as soon as we are aware of this, which is the very first point in terms of priorities, then we can cope with that with the right tools and the right strategies. We're trying to do this in our small own way in PEC. We've seen this many times facing these challenges with clients we work with, their employees, which are eventually the end users, and mentees and coaches for our mentoring coaching programs. And actually, many of them, most of them, are part of this target group because we work a lot with high potential people, talents, young professionals who just enter the workforce, basically. And so for the first time, they see the work dynamics. So anything that is related to, in particular, two of the mentoring streams that we have, which are the smart leadership one and the managing complexity ones, are particularly going into this direction. Just to give you a couple of examples, like smart leadership, one of the main focus is to help mentees emphasize their emotional intelligence side, helping them building that resiliency that they need to address workforce challenges, adjusting their leadership style based on their strengths and what's their character, being more empathetic in their relationship with their colleagues, being able to share feedback also to their managers and so on. That's critical, of critical importance. And those are all topics that everybody actually struggles. Young professionals, having their first work experience more than others, very likely. While managing complexity, the word kind of speaks by itself, but it's very tailored, for anything related to burnout prevention, time management, stress management, especially if we consider the VUCA world we are living in, with all the need for adaptability, to act rapidly, to be flexible, especially for complex environments or industries moving very fast, or realities that are that need to keep up with change management initiative or D&I situations and so on. It tries to give and to keep the mentees with the right tools to manage all of this, which can appear, like a bombarding of stuff, of emotions, of informations, of new dynamics. But the end goal is to improve the overall well-being and performance also, because we're also talking business. It's not just about a unicorn world, but we try to measure what's the tangible results after this sort of programs and soft skill development. And for sure, there are many challenges related to this, but I tend to be personally and also professionally a very an idealistic person and optimistic person, and I'm seeing the positive side of this. And I really think we have a great opportunity here to have a concrete impact on what's going to be the future evolution, because by the end of the day, this target, like a Gen Z population, they're going to be the future leaders in our work context. So the more we can do to prevent these sort of issues as soon as we kind of detect them, the better.
Wow, thank you, Giacomo. It sounds like listening to you, it really demonstrates the reality you experience, the messy reality that you experience every day, but at the same time, you see an amazing opportunity in that. So thank you. So I'm really curious also, Minerva, what were your initial thoughts as you're working with young and senior people in your work? Do you want me to share the slide?
Well, yes, please. Well, my initial thoughts were from working with both senior and junior individuals, are that the two groups, the two target groups, are very tired and unclear about the future. The report you already mentioned makes it clear, as you showed before, that average emotional intelligence scores drop by 4.54%, and the scores of all individual competencies fell drastically. But it's not only your report. Additional evidence also supports this theory. According to Gartner's report, top 5 priorities for HR leaders in 2024, 77% of employees feel exhausted. Imagine, it seems that all generations could be experiencing higher levels of burnout and more difficulties with empathy. As mentioned, as Giacomo mentioned, we are living in a very complex environment. In 2020, Jaime Castio coined the term BANI, that stands for brittle, anxious, non-linear, and incomprehensible, which describes this complexity. in his article, I suppose most of you will already know it, but if not, I recommend to read it because it's very interesting. In his article called Facing the Age of Chaos, he established that people are struggling to manage their own fragility in a world that is changing at full speed and in ways that it's very hard to understand. To be quite honest, then, this generally speaking leads to anxiety and the fear of not being able to cope with the future. And in my opinion, this is something that all generations are experiencing. In this context, I think that we need to develop, to create spaces for psychological safety, and obviously to maximize empathy. As Giacomo mentioned before, regarding leadership, which is very interesting for me, it's a trend that I am really concerned about it. I don't know if you can show the slide.
Yeah. This one.
And the next one, please. Yeah. Thank you, Maria. As you can see there, this same report I told you before, top 5 priorities for HR leaders in 2024, shows that 75% of managers feel overwhelmed and 73% do not feel equipped to handle the changes. In fact, it is really concerning to know that 1 in 5 managers would prefer not to have people management responsibilities if given the choice. Taking into account that the majority of managers in large companies belong to generations preceding Gen Z, these figures indicate how do they feel about continuing to lead the future. It is really concerning, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you know, what is even more alarming is that 52% of the youngest generation of workers in a recent survey in the UK say they would rather be individual contributors than middle managers. This is a trend often referred, as I put in the slide, often referred to as conscious unbossing, reflects their belief that leadership is not worth the effort. And this is really incredible for me because it means that all generations are suffering this and that we have to change this trend, of course, because we need managers for the future, but also because it's a social responsibility. I think that we all have a certain accountability for the future with this.
Yeah, wow. This is really, really interesting. A lot of points that you bring up here, Minerva. Very, very interesting. Apart from this, the psychological safety, to actually the word that came to my mind when I listened to you is kind of finding that common language and approach. And that's why, because it's messy, isn't it? It's really messy when we look at the different generations, when we look at what's going on, the different needs, and this amazing opportunity in this current picture that also Giacomo mentioned. And that's why, as I think we used a lot of terms already here in the webinar about emotional intelligence, about psychological safety, about empathy. So, oops, sorry, I wanted to go back to that slide. So let's just quickly, as some of the people joining us are probably new also to emotional intelligence, let me briefly bring in that model that 6 Seconds has developed over 25 years ago about emotional intelligence. That's not just a model, that it's actually also a process that can create that common language and approach. And here we see it's a circle. That's the first thing I think is interesting. And it's a dynamic circle. That model was developed by 6 Seconds to make emotional intelligence actionable and really hands-on to put into daily life, work and life, of course. And we see it's also a process. It's a circle, not just a rigid model. And we see the blue area, it's about self-awareness. So self-awareness in terms of the question, what am I feeling? But also, what is going on? In blue also stands for reflecting color psychology. It's really to make sure that What am I noticing? Emotions give us a message and an energy. And we do have patterns with this. Some are we are aware, others not. The next area is the self-management, which is connected to the option, what options do I have? In a sense, red like the traffic light, red like the traffic light. Do I consider the options that I have? Do I stop and pause at the red traffic light sometimes to see options, opportunities, consequences, or do I just go on autopilot and do what I've done in the past? So really managing, it's also called self-management, looking at the options before diving into reaction, but rather a response, not a reaction, but a response. And the give yourself the green is the self-direction, all about what really matters to me. So linking all of that to what matters to me, but also the longer term vision, mission, purpose, and values for myself and people around me. So what's going on? What option do I have and what truly matters? And in the green area, for example, is that empathy that Minerva mentioned, the competency that Minerva mentioned, increase empathy included. But emotional intelligence clearly is not just empathy that a lot of people think. It's really how we are combining our thinking and our feeling, our head and our heart to take optimal decisions. In very brief, that's why we're really saying, like on the next slide, I already said, emotional intelligence is the capacity to integrate thinking and feeling for sustainable, intentional decision-making. Very simple, being smart with feelings. So there's a little insight for the ones who are new to 6 Seconds, first time at that webinar, or just to hear it again. But with that insight as well now, and as also Giacomo mentioned already some of the approaches that you're already practicing. But I'm curious now to hear from Giacomo. Why did you choose to add emotional intelligence as one of the key development competencies in your company? And how did you get started, actually?
That's a great question, Maria, even though I'm thinking maybe the right question is why not, rather than why, especially if we consider, you know, what we said before about current dynamics and everything. Like, I don't think like this is a nice to have, but rather a must. And we realized this from the very early days, I have to say. And this is not just, you know, to have like some buzzwords within the offer, or, you know, just to say, yes, we do emotional intelligence stuff as well. But it is also for being very pragmatic and business driven. Like if you look at the company's perspective, it has a huge impact. Because when employees, and now I'm getting back to, you know, the reports and the GenZ target, 1 out of 2 is not engaged within their companies. And when you're not engaged, first of all, you're not as productive as you will be if, you know, your purpose is fulfilled, you have great work relationship and everything. And this is proven. It's not just something flying in the air. And also the likelihood for you to resign, and so huge turnover cost for the companies is right behind the corner. We actually got a computation about this aspect based on market studies and data. And every time an employee resigns is immediately like a 10K cost for the company. On average, actually, it can be much higher, especially some specific sectors like consultancy and so on, can be also double that. Plus, you have to add, you know, all the time for new recruiting, replacing the person, getting the new feeling in the team, the human cost of it. I mean, it's a huge cost, as well as the reduced productivity. Also, like if we think emotional intelligence as an ingredient that is needed to bond people together in a better way, being able to manage their emotions, other people's emotions, and the relationship in a better way, we can see this reflected into, you know, employee and manager relationship improved. And it is very, very often said and heard, you know, that people leave their manager or leave their boss. They don't leave only their workplace, right? So this also goes into that direction. Especially younger generations, they don't care as much as older ones, you know, for variables like stability or for the salary that they get. Actually, the
Yeah.
salary is only the fourth driver in terms of driving their satisfaction. But before that, there is D&I, there is having the purpose with the job you're doing, having a clear career path and decision-making transparency in the working environment. So these are all very important elements that right now are not always considered in the equation. And if we add up also all the social costs related, to stress management or burnout that can be prevented via this way, it's a pretty clear and evident picture. And to get back to your question, of course, improving your own awareness and emotional regulation with this, with better collaboration, feedback techniques, at the end, it pays off on the company level because you're more satisfied, you have more success on the long term. Okay, so it's an investment that doesn't pay off right tomorrow, but at the end, the ROI is extremely positive. And just not to give you a specific use cases externally, but to be consistent and to show you what we did internally also impact, because it wouldn't make sense for us, to say, hey, we promote mentoring, coaching in external realities, but then we don't have the same attention internally, all right? For example, all our team members, collaborators, they also have unlimited mentoring and coaching sessions with all our network and also external partners. Wow. We realize the importance of, bonding and as a team to work on these topics from the very early days. We had a full year team coaching experience, which actually had a huge impact in the way we were managing our relationships, our communication, and in a early growth, fast growing startup environment, there are many challenges to face. So this was critical, actually. Yeah. We have some elements that got out of that to improve our open feedback and communication. For example, we have we call them orange behaviors, which are basically some behaviors that we promote between the team members. One of those is doors always open, meaning that no matter your role, how long you've been in the company, what's the underlying issue, but everybody is always ready to be there for you, to listen to you, to support you. Once again, you're a co-founder or you're a student who just started an internship process with us, it doesn't matter. And this goes both ways, of course. Other stuff, just to give a couple more examples, we run many workshops to specific topics during our team buildings on retreats, where we focus on emotional triggers, how can we prevent or resolve conflicts when they emerge in a smarter way? How can we develop deeper emotional connections between us, but being able, to separate at the same time what's related to the work sphere and what's related to, the private sphere, because sometimes that can be an issue. So in general, all this sort of stuff go into the direction of creating, an environment that is more open, more constructive, and where empathy and collaboration play a big role rather than, just negative sides of basically the opposite view, anything related to stress, to overload of work, to not saying things in a straightforward way to your colleagues and not sharing that feedback, not having that additional chat, that especially in our remote and smart working environments, you need to understand how to make this work in the different contexts as well.
Wow, it sounds like, Giacomo, just one sentence that comes to mind when I listen to you, didn't make it tick the box exercise. That's something that is emotional intelligence. It sounds like you really embedded it into also your existing culture and approaches from early days to make sure when new employees also join or when the team is just created. Amazing. Gonna come back to this. I'm curious a bit more. But also as we spoke about, also this process also that Giacomo explains, sounds like it's also intergenerational. We talked there about the different generation set and the other generations. And Minerva, as you work a lot with both of these generations, what would you say are because we know it's not always easy. It sounds easy when you talk about that, but what are kind of the biases or patterns that intervene most to hinder intergenerational dialogues in businesses? Because it's easy to say it's an open door policy, but how would you say is this, how would you describe that, and how can EQ help in this?
Yeah. Wow, what a question, Maria. In my experience as a coach, I observe biases and patterns that block intergenerational dialogue across all generations. If we speak about generations prior to Gen Z, what I most often see in my sessions related to the authority bias based on age. Many individuals from older generations may assume that their experience automatically grants them authority or capability. This is something that sometimes can lead to a lack of genuine listening and a rejection to truly understand Generation Z. This is what you said before about having the doors open, but being really open myself to listen to you and to try to understand you. And in that way, Generation Z's perspective tend to have a more horizontal view of leadership, less hierarchical. And because of that, dealing with authoritarian leaders may cause them disengagement, the disengagement that Giacomo mentioned before, because they don't feel that the decisions are created also with them, but imposed on them. In Generation Z, I also tend to see a short-term bias. And this is very interesting because in my experience, of course, but in my experience, I think that they find challenging to articulate a long-term vision and feel the need to constantly keep up the pace. And this can push them to perceive all generations as slow, rigid, or resistant to change. And they may become impatient with the pace of change and also feel frustrated. This makes sense what you mentioned before, Maria, about how do you manage your thinking and your feelings. And this is the kind of pattern that I usually see. And regarding your question on how can emotional intelligence help, I think that it significantly can help in two ways. First of all, becoming aware of the lenses that we are using to look at the world, our biases, our beliefs, the values that drive us in an unconscious way, and the automatic patterns that get triggered in us, what you mentioned before, Maria. And secondly, trying to understand the other. I love Stephen Covey's fifth habit. Seek first to understand people, then seek to be understood. And I think that this is fundamental here. Developing empathy and curiosity to truly understand one to each other. And this is done through deep listening, which will help us recognize that we are all human beings. We are the same. We are social beings, and we need one to each other to go on in this so complex world, VUCA or VANI world.
Wow, very interesting, very interesting. It reminds me when I listen to you of this, one of the exercises I use a lot in my coaching is for empathy, is like listening on two levels. There's a level of the rational, there's a level of the emotional. That's
right.
Very, very insightful. And also when you just spoke, I want to connect this also actually to one of the slides from the State of the Heart report, which is connected, it sounds like, really to some of these biases you also mentioned, because it's about when you said this, they feel under pressure with the, sorry, I have something wrong. They feel under pressure with the longer term goals. And this is what we call in the model the pursuable goal, the longer term vision. That is obviously harder for them for the time being. So Giacomo, what would you say? How do you experience this bias with the generation mix?
Well, I think we could talk about this sort of biases for the whole day and probably wouldn't be enough, but I will just pick one that I like a lot because I hear it very often, and also I had the opportunity to touch it, let's say, which is the so spread, sentence that Gen Z generation, they don't want to work, and probably something that everybody of us heard many, many times. This is, of course, a stereotype, and it comes from an underlying misunderstanding of the Gen Z values that we talked about a bit earlier. For example, they put much more importance into the work-life balance, into being able to have a flexible work schedule and doing meaningful work that they really care about, that they're really passionate about. They prioritize mental health. They seek for constant and continuous personal and professional development. They want to work for a company where they feel that the values are not just as slogans in their website, but they are really aligned with them. And also that they care about social and environmental issues, D&I, and these dynamics. And almost 80% of them, and this is like, it's not Giacomo saying it, it's a market report from Deloitte, actually, if you want to deep dive on that, it says that they prefer to work with this type of company. Otherwise, if they don't see this fit, it's not going to last long, basically. And there is a pretty big mismatch if we think of older generations. Usually they tend to at the same time prioritize longer working hours or loyalty, and kind of relate them to dedication, being an hard worker, being a person who just serves our respect from a professional perspective. But I think that Gen Z is simply focusing on working smarter and realigning their personal values with the work values they look forward to finding. And actually, I think it is something that everybody should be able to do. So we need this sort of connecting linkage between the generations, and EQ is the answer. Because if we allow for better comprehension on one hand, but also dialogue and communication on the other one, generations are able to express what their values they care about, which are the goals, and how they can create a win-win situation for both, right? And I will give you like a direct example of of Gen Z not being people who don't work to work. Actually, it happened a few months ago. There was this student from University of Bologna, Clara, Argentinian student. She heard a talk I had at university, and then reached out to me via LinkedIn, asking if she could work for us, collaborate while studying, without even getting a financial compensation, which we didn't agree upon, because we don't agree with the concept of free work or free internship, regardless of your experience or anything. But beside that, it turned out actually to be the perfect match in that moment for what we needed as a side project. And her cultural fit, her proactive nature, what she could support us in. And this perfect match contributed a lot to her having a meaningful work inside Tech. And I think it is a good reflection of how can Gen Z when you find the right match. She was actually one of the best collaborators, regardless of her very young age. I had the opportunity to work with in my professional experience, and when we remove those initial barriers, those initial biases, not being affected by stereotypes, we open up ourselves to really see what could be the potential matches, and at the end of the day, not only creating great relationships, but also having good results for the business.
Wow. Giacomo, I really got excited when I listened to you. I really got excited. I'm like, wow, finally, this is that opportunity. Because as I work a lot with emotional intelligence coaching as well, and leaders in organization, it sounds like it's happening. And these three components, what you mentioned, make really a big difference. Because otherwise, I don't know how it would continue. When we especially look at my generation. I always say otherwise it just takes a big explosion because it's not a way to continue. Yes, I personally got excited listening to you as well. So hearing also these, what Giacomo explained and what we spoke about, this not gender, generation collaboration, as I want to call it, actually. As Minerva, as you work a lot also in Spain in that field, I'm just curious, what are you observing with respect to these phenomena?
Well, it may sound a bit harsh, but I observe that we are kind of losing our humanity. We are disconnecting from what truly make us human, and plugging from the essence of being social beings. You know, I think that we need urgently to bring empathy into play because the burnout increase that we have been talking about and the difficulty to understand this bunny wall among previous generations is making them less willing to make the effort to understand those who doesn't want to suffer the same way they did, as Giacomo mentioned. It's like, well, you don't want to make the effort I've done. I don't want to understand you. It's a kind of simplifying it. And it's surprising because in the training or support processes I lead, I've observed that both have skills that are useful to each other, as Giacomo mentioned before also. On the one hand, the senior individuals tend to show higher levels of resilience and also this long-term vision. And even though they are also exhausted by the pace of change, I can tell you, I hear many expressing the desire to give up. There is a kind of lack of trust in the future. But on the other hand, junior individuals tend to focus on the short term, and they are very well used to the speed of technology, and they enjoy the immediacy of the world they have grown up in. So in fact, I feel that Gen Z, they don't have or they don't know how to envision the future. And this causes a great deal of anxiety, as you show us before, Maria. So both have strengths and also areas of improvement that can be shared. They can help one to each other. So it's very surprising for me to see that. Nevertheless, beside the biases that we were talking before, I think that there is another challenge. I don't know what Giacomo think about this because I am an elder generation, but I think that, or in my experience, Generation Z, the fact that a large part of their interactions are managed or are being managed by or through screens and technology sometimes could make difficult for them to hold deep conversations. And I think that this is a tragedy because I think that they need help, but they don't know, a lot of times they don't know how to ask for that help. Even though all generations or elder generations can help, want to help them. And you know, they are the future. We need them strong and happy.
Wow, yeah. And asking for help in the 6 seconds model is also connected to, for example, exercise optimism.
Yeah.
It's one option on how to move forward, right? And
to be vulnerable.
and listening to both of you, it sounds like, gosh, why don't we do that all more? It could be so easy. It's all there. We have all the resources out there. It's just obviously not always so easy, as we know. And that's why, Giacomo, with especially your experience here, and listeners, we have lots of listeners here in that webinar and people listening to our recording. What would you give as an advice to other companies who consider to do the same or similar to what you have done? Kind of in terms of also what challenges or best practices would they need to keep in mind with the embedding more EQ?
Well, I was also trying to give you, some actionables or concrete best practices based on my own experience. Of course, I don't have all the answers. Nobody has all the answers in this, and we keep learning and improving constantly as well. We make many mistakes as well, but I can give you some a little bit of an overview when it comes to mentoring and coaching, especially as powerful tools to reinforce those topics. There are several best practices, but I will focus on the 5 that I feel like are the one having the biggest impact when it comes to achieving your company goals and improving the EQ inside the company. And the first one is having very clear goals and alignment, because when you set up a coaching or a mentoring activity that is tailored to improve those soft skills, it needs to be aligned with your company goals by the end of the day. And regardless of the specific goal, whether it is engaging more the people or retaining talent, upskilling managers, supporting people while transitioning from a role to another one, from in a growing stage maybe of the company that is scaling, organizational changes and so on, it needs to be specifically tailored to that. And for example, in fact, we do that via a very custom co-design process. Otherwise, you are not able to reach maximum impact. Second point, just as important, is a word that we used a lot during this call, which is engagement. If you don't create the right engagement and the right match between the mentees and the mentors, or the coaches and the coaches, the program is not going to be successful. It's better to invest a bit more time in that initial matching stage, but then the results will pay off. And actually, this is one of the things I'm most proud of as a CPO, especially also given my role in Impact, that like usually we have 100% satisfaction on the matching. Like only 1 out of 1,000 matches in our process are not successful ones. We have a couple of steps. First one is via technology, but then technology is not enough. Not yet, at least, but I think it will never be enough. We also need the human connection, the human side. So we facilitate also chemistry sessions between the two sides to see whether actually that is a real click or not. And this customization of the experience is actually what pays off afterwards. Third point is something we are also very passionate about, which is data. You need to check data, get feedback, and to be able to measure and track what's the real impact of what you're doing. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to say, yeah, it was a success. Let's repeat it. Let's scale it inside the organization. And so far, the delta has always been positive between what's the average level of the mentees in this specific skills from day 0 to the end of the programs. And that is something that, of course, I'm really proud of, but also some specific aspects like what's your level of satisfaction with the current company learning and development opportunities right now or after that we give you this opportunity once again. Would you like to improve? Would you like to continue this sort of program? And if yes, why? Would you suggest some colleagues who might be the one that gets the most out of this based on your experience, and so on? Like the list, I could keep going for hours probably. Last two ones are you need to develop that sort of culture internally, and not just via external partners. Otherwise, it's gonna work out only like a 50%. And here comes the example I was making before with how we try to foster this with Impact as well. Free mentoring, unlimited coaching, personalized development plans, unlimited holidays, free therapy sessions. We really try to tailor this to also the new generations of workers' needs. And the last one is one that is once again related to, we talked about stereotypes before. There is, and very often it is heard that we don't have time for that. Like we're too busy for mentoring activity. We're too busy to be coached and so on. But actually, it's counterintuitive. But it's something that will support you into working better, being more productive, reducing your stress. Just working smarter. Just like we said before, GenZ wants to work smarter, which doesn't mean in the same time hour I can do more, or less time hour I do what you do in 8 hours per day. And this then gets reflected into what's the client satisfaction at the end of the program. Would you like to scale up the programs? And so far so good. Like the answer is, if they start a program with us, usually the next one is like a 300% increase in terms of impact and numbers that you want to involve. So I told you, we're kind of data driven in this. It's not just words. We're about to be impacting in the next few weeks to 1,000 employees since we started. So it's going to be a huge milestone. Of course, it's not everything, just positive. There are challenges when you implement these sort of strategies and tools within organizations, especially if you're new to this sort of development programs, custom development programs. But as long as you are aware of this and you get the right support, and you follow some of the best practices at DataShare, but there are many others actually. You have all the tools of the ingredients for a great recipe, not only for having that feedback form from employees saying, yes, I was happy about the initiative, but actually driving change and being able to measure the result in the medium to long term and grow eventually.
Wow. Thank you so much, making it so practical. I just summarize, and please help me with the fifth one. You said the one is the engagement. The second one was the data and get the feedback. No, sorry. The first was the goal.
Yeah.
The goal, clear goal, then engagement, then the data with the feedback, then to also create the culture internally.
Yes.
And the fifth, what's the key?
The fifth and final one is to avoid the bias of I'm too busy.
No time for coaching and so on.
Yeah.
Great. I love that. Thank you so much, Giacomo. So I'm just conscious of our time now, but I think we still have one question. Connecting it now to the coaching and mentoring, Minerva, as you are in that field so active, I wonder what skills need to be coached the most out of your experience when we talk about this?
Maria, I would like to reinforce what Giacomo said before, because in order to foster empathy, I believe that internal mentoring programs or external, mentoring programs pairing different generations together are a guaranteed success. In my experience, they always help to build that connection that we need. And regarding your question, from my point of view, it is urgent to start working on expanding self-awareness. Getting to know yourself is the key to everything. As you say before, when you present the model, when I am able to understand what is happening to me in response to reality, how do I perceive it, and how the interpretation influences my emotions, a world of possibilities open to me. I get the ability to self-regulate and choose how to act in order to achieve what I want. So the first step, in my opinion, should be to understand how my brain and my body work together to build automatic patterns that not always are useful for me. And the second one, I think, is, again, empathy. I advocate for focusing on empathy. Empathy is essential for stepping outside of oneself, and through a conscious and voluntary effort, and of course, putting the time to do it, entering into the world of the other person to understand them. And I think that this is the second. I think that these two are the priorities, Maria.
Right. Thank you, Minerva. And listening to you both, and now to you, Minerva, as well, with the coaching, it brings me back again to the model, right? It's like this common language that Giacomo and you explained us now, that culture and language that is you seem to create with adding emotional intelligence to these processes.
Of course.
In the coaching and mentoring, but also internally. Internally and externally on both levels. And let me just go back to the slides for the end of the session now as well, please. Because that's why also I think we could hear that and even feel it, I think. When we talk about emotional intelligence, we need to keep in mind that emotional intelligence, it has to do with its emotions are chemicals in our body, and emotions are these chemical substances, that's a spelling, sorry, that influence our thoughts and behaviors, but they are contagious. And there's so much faster contagious than any coronavirus was. They're contagious if we want or not. And that's why it leads back to what you said, Minerva, as well. It starts with our own awareness, with knowing ourselves, being self-aware of really what the message and signals are we sending out. But not just this, also how we're able to manage it and how we are linking it back to the bigger picture, to the goal, right? So we can start with the goal. Clear, what is it that's the clear goal we all want to work on an individual and on an organizational level in that sense. And that's why at 6 seconds we have that slogan that emotions drive people and people drive performance. As simple as it sounds and as simple as it could be. We heard really practical examples from both of you here today. Really want to thank you for that. But we have, I think, 2 or 3 minutes that I want to ask if there are any questions from our listeners here, as we can't unmute you. Unfortunately, it's due to our GDPR as well, because it's recorded. But are we having any questions? I see there are some links, some comments. Some people had to leave already. Thank you for the insightful, very insightful Minerva. We have comments here from Italy, from Spain, people also from Spain joining. Is there any other questions or any other comments from you, Giacomo or Minerva, before we close the call?
Well, first of all, thank you, Maria, for facilitating this. It was very nice and learning experience for me as well. Hopefully it was useful, and some of the participants or people who will listen to the webinar afterwards will get something concrete back home. No, just wanted to share something funny. And I don't recall if we mentioned this, but actually Minerva is a mentoring coach in our network. So you can see now that, I just don't speak words, but we really focus into getting the best professionals into the network. We put much effort into it, and super proud of that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's very interesting to share spaces like this that you are facilitating, Maria, because we need to spread this in the world, not only in the business, but also at the schools, education. It's very important to share this information.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. Absolutely. The school generation should already be informed and learned about that, right? A lot of topics in school, I question sometimes if they're so necessary, but this definitely would need to be added.
Yeah.
And then we have one question from Andrea. Minerva talked a lot about the short-sightedness of GenZ. How can we engage them while teaching to work for things in the long term?
What a question. What a question. I think, well, in my experience, we need to make this engagement that we've mentioned a lot of times, because it is for sure that they need to learn how to see in the long term, but at the same time, their long term is not ours. And when I say ours, I mean I am an older generation. And I think that we have to find that point in which we understand to each other, to help them to see, but also trying to understand what they want to share about their long-term vision. So I think that connection with them is the answer.
Connection. Giacomo.
If I can add a quick note on that, and I can relate to that absolutely. It's I think it all comes down to the value match, the purpose match at the end of the day. Because if there is a true match there, I think GenZ worker will be up to work for the same company lifetime. Like regardless of the trends and hopping job to job and so on. If we think, for example, sustainability matters, and with all the things that are going there, we know that the solution, first of all, is not easy, and secondly, it will not come in a couple of years. It's something that, if we're able to make it, we're going to be able to make it in like 50, 100 years or something like that, very long term. But still, it's something that every day triggers reactions, attentions, and GenZ focus worldwide. So I think at the end of the day, it relates a lot to whether the purpose and the values that you feel are fitting with the company are are true or not.
Well, great. Thanks, Giacomo. And that connects again to our model, because I think the 6 seconds model with emotional intelligence has also this distinction that it has the pursue noble goal, which is the purpose in the model. And actually, it's a circle. We can start anywhere, but I'm a strong believer, and I heard it from both of you. It really is about the goal, the direction with the purpose. Otherwise, everything else seems hard. And often, to be direct, a waste of time and money invested if that's not aligned. And the biggest engager. Yeah. So I'm conscious of our time, bringing back my lovely slides that I had today a little bit back and forth. At this point, I really want to thank you, Minerva, thank you, Giacomo, for really taking the time to prepare to be here with us and sharing your amazing, rich experience and insights into that topic. As I said, I got truly excited myself again talking to you about that opportunity we have in front of our eyes with this generation set and all the generations, and how emotional intelligence is the core. When I listen to both of you, the core to really take that as an advantage and really bring that to the next level. So thank you again, and to all our listeners as well. If you want to find out more about 6 seconds, but also Giacomo and from Minerva, please send it to us. We are happy to forward it and share it with Giacomo and Minerva. Anything you want to know more or add or share or get in contact with, of course. So thank you all again.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Minerva. Everybody have a great day.
Have a great day, everybody. See you soon
Cheers.
in the next webinar. Bye. Bye-bye.